Hi, and welcome to Masterdisk. I'm Scott Hall, and today with me is Taylor Rigg, and we're talking about mixing and mastering, but maybe not quite exactly the way you think. This is mixing and mastering. Two people doing two separate jobs, but coordinated. Here we're going to talk about a particular project that we worked on that came to me initially as a mastering project. The artist is Jonathan Puzan, and we'll maybe hear a word from him later in this podcast. So, as best I can recall, this was from a few months ago. Jonathan had mix, wanted to know if I thought it was ready for mastering, and we started a conversation about it. Before we get too deep into the conversation, I want to play some of what the mix that was sent to us, so listeners can get an idea of what it is we're talking about. So this is from the original mix from Jonathan.
You're about as in tune as Bukowski, all depressed and restless as an owl.
So deliberately
The
owl thing. Check out those lyrics when you listen to this song inevitably.
Yeah. But isn't that what it's always about? The production really has to support the song.
Oh, yeah.
Watch rain clouds.
So on one level, this sounds fine. On one level, this is like, you know, a nutty little song recorded kind of loosey-goose in a room with some production. Grab us a piece of the chorus.
Sure.
Maybe we're all just broken people. No single head's perfectly straight.
So what Jonathan wanted was, really wanted to do the mix. So we started with that process. I told him what I thought was up with the mix, and he worked on it a little bit, but we pretty quickly realized that that wasn't producing great results. He was basically turning knobs based on my input. It's like, well, maybe the guitar should come up. He turns the guitar, well, that was too much. Maybe the vocals need a little bit of reverb. I changed that. I was like, well, now everything. So that's when I introduced you, and pick up the story from there, like what your relationship with the song and then with Jonathan and how we ended up working together.
Sure. So you did your evaluation process with Jonathan, and then you brought it to me, said, hey, I want you to check this out, and I want to know what your thoughts are. So then I did an evaluation process. So I listened to it from a slightly different perspective. This is more about how can I bring something to the table? And the interesting thing there, after eventually talking with Jonathan a bit, I came to realize that we were both very much on the same page, where like I felt that the song didn't need an utter rescue. I just felt like it could be polished up a bit. And he was also coming from the perspective of, hey, this record means a lot to me, and I've taken it very far. I would like to be involved in mixing it. I don't want to just give it over and let somebody else do the work. And so where the agreement we kind of came to is like, okay, I tell you what, let me mix this first song with your stems. He gave me both stems and multitracks, and we can delineate that difference in a minute if we need. But from there, I began to work on the song, and the goal of it was to give him my mix and provide him with the notes. And so from there, he could be like, all right, I'm going to take Taylor's notes, look at his steps, what he did, and either redo it myself or keep Taylor's mix. And in the end, we ended up going with my mix, but it's a very collaborative process between he and I, and we've worked on songs since. But yeah, it's been like a weird kind of pseudo back and forth mix coaching type of thing.
Well, I recognize the story, not just because of Jonathan, but because I've heard it over and over again. One of the reasons people think they need to mix their songs themselves is they haven't met somebody that they can interact with and collaborate with. So there are two options: are learn it yourself or send it off to somebody and lose control of the project. And that's not how records were mixed back in the day.
Right.
You know, the producer would be in the room, usually with the mix engineer, developing the mix. Or if not, the two of them knew each other well enough that kind of like, you know, comment to you. It's like, it needs to be this kind of thing, or it needs to be focus on this. Don't allow the production to get too slick in this case because it's going to it's going to foul up the song. But it's usually born out of a desire to have control, but realizing you don't have the skills. Kind of like restoring an old car. One way to do it is to just pay somebody a whole bunch of money and a restored car comes in on a flatbed after it's done. And another is to find somebody who will guide you through the process and let you do some of the work and feel like you own it. You can actually show it off and be proud of the work you did, not just the money you spent on it. Yeah. And so I think we, by default, focus on the latter, on like helping somebody collaborate. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about how we got to these things and how the transitions happened. But let's talk a little bit about our communication through the process. So I'd put you in touch with the client so that you could start going back and forth on this and hearing some of the feedback. What was the point that Jonathan decided, I'm ready to give you that level of control?
Sure. Honestly, it was mix one of this song, which is the first song we did. I think once he heard his song, realized, like its potential, realized, he's like, okay, I've been investing in these songs. I like hearing them as good as they can be. It was never a control struggle. It was just, we were courting each other in the beginning. But once we got to this point, it's been pretty remarkable. Shout out to Jonathan, because we're on, I don't know, maybe song 5 or something like that, song 6, and I have implemented some of the notes I've given. So each new mix that I get to work on, I have to do less and less and less. And a great example, this most recent song I did, which we're not listening to today, it was one of the more fun experiences I've had mixing in a while, because all I needed to do was go into Pro Tools and just look around and have fun messing with stuff. There was no intrinsic problems to fix.
This is an ideal situation where the provider, in this case our client, gets better at the process, not because it makes our job easier, because it elevates the quality of the product. Even from a financial standpoint, it's not spending that much more money than it would have, just a mastering would have cost.
Sure.
We roll in mastering into the cost of it, and yes, it does cost more to mix and master than it does to just master, because it takes quite a bit more time. But the mastering process without the remix is a huge bunch of compromises, and you're basically saying, well, here's the mix, let's make the best out of it. And but what this process that I'm trying to reveal is, like, what else is possible? A mastering engineer's skills, amongst other things, has been described as being able to imagine the way the song could sound and having some of the skills to get it there, which is not that different from a mixer. It's just your tools are very different and your perspective is really different. Let's do, just for fun, because everybody's probably wondering, let's do a chorus of the original mix and chorus of your mix, so we know what we're talking about.
Sure. All right, so this is the original mix.
Maybe we're all just broken people. No single head's perfectly straight.
And then here's my mix.
Maybe we're all just broken people. No single head's perfectly straight.
My mix and his mix aren't that different. They're not extremely different. And that's, a testament to him, but also just that's what this particular project needed. It didn't need an overhaul. It was just about bringing things into focus.
Well, that goes right back to the first comment. The client wanted somebody that would work with him.
Right.
That would help him finish the task of the mix.
I have my notes here from this session.
Do you usually write mix notes? Or is this just because we had this conversation going with
This was specific for Jonathan. I have done I love to talk to people, and I love to tell people, like, oh, check out what I did. You're going to love this. So oftentimes in email threads, I do get this kind of back and forth going. But this was a unique, very specific, technique-driven type of overview, and he's been able to take these and apply some of the concepts So in this song, particularly, I've got a whole bit about drums here, but one thing that I noticed, and this is, you talk about perspective as a mastering engineer, what is the song supposed to be like? How is the listener going to be able to listen to this multiple times? That is the mastering perspective, and it is mine as well, but another way I listen to songs is like, okay, where are the problems? And so immediately I noticed between his multitracks and his stems. So the difference there, just to quickly clarify, stems are the individual tracks that have their effects and their processing baked on them from the mix. A multi-track is going to be literally just the kick microphone, the snare microphone, the vocal, and with no treatment whatsoever.
So a drum stem would be a submix of all those drum mics.
Sort of. In this case, it was like snare stem,
Okay.
kick stem,
Well, which might
overheads.
be a combination of top and bottom mic.
Exactly,
Or it might
yeah.
Be it's a reduction
Yes.
of the mix, but baked in, it sounds like it's the problem.
Well, okay, yeah. So I was reviewing the stems in the multi-tracks, and I noticed that there was this big old hole in the middle of the drums in the stems. When I went to the snare stem, sounded fine. When I went to the kick stem, sounded fine until I reached the overheads, and I noticed that he'd high-passed the overheads, which is a common thing to do. But when I joined the overheads back with the shells, there comes the hole. And so what I figured out and I fixed with the multi-tracks is that, there's, when you're using a filter, sometimes, all the time, you are creating a phase discrepancy. Right. So it just so happens that where he had that filter sitting was interacting with the fundamental of the snare.
Yeah, that's if you're going. So two things. You mentioned listening for problems. That's actually a really dangerous thing to do in the mastering phase, but absolutely essential to do in the mix phase. If I focus on problems, I'll solve the problems and think I'm done. I have to sort of focus on end results. It's a common thing with us is finding out that sometimes, maybe even half of the time, that the underlying tracks are actually in really good shape.
I think a lot of that stuff just comes down to experience, and that's one of the things that for mastering or mixing, it's nice to have somebody in your corner that has the experience. Jonathan went to school for this stuff, and he's clearly a great engineer, good songwriter, but there were just certain things that I encountered that I've encountered before and that maybe he hadn't. And so it's pretty much experience. Every single day, I am in Pro Tools mixing a song. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And
it's important. It's other people's music, so you really, most of it, you do your own work, but it's figuring out what the song needs and wants. So go through your notes, because I'm curious. What other things changed within the perspective of the stems and the mix?
One thing that stuck out to me was some of the background vocals. His background vocals, particularly in the song, are very eccentric. They're very cool, but it's kind of this low-key kind of Americana song, but then he's got these just vocals where at certain points he's literally just like screaming. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is obviously something that's got to be featured. You can't really squelch that down because it's already so the idea was featuring it without it being abrasive. And so most of that was taken care of with your standard tools like EQ and compression. And I remember Jonathan and we had a phone call. He was a little concerned with over compressing things. And first of all, I really appreciate that perspective because few people have it anymore. Compression makes it louder and hotter and crunchier, and so we all love it. But the reality is, you do need to take a step back. But you can go too far in the other direction too. You can be afraid of it, and so I think that's what was happening with those background vocals. So I leveled them out and did some other things. But another interesting thing about these background vocals, there's a section, I don't have it marked in the song, but somewhere in the song he talks about like angels or something angelic or whatever. So I had the idea, because at the beginning of the song, lyrically, he says, he talks about an owl, and he goes,
they go,
who's, yeah. I thought, oh, this is a good opportunity to do that. So I put a bunch of reverb on those background vocals and stuff to make it very angelic. And he really responded well to that, obviously, because it's like, it was just another area where it's like, okay, you're obviously listening to my song. You understand what my style is, the direction I'm trying to take it. Like, so that's a big thing, was going through his tracks, finding out what needed to be done to them, but also staying in his lane.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a good example of when everybody's working together. In our case, the client's happy with the results and has created a long-term relationship with him. As I mentioned earlier, we're gonna get Jonathan's comments specifically about one of these songs that we're working on from the horse's mouth. Let's see what his thoughts were on the process, because that's, I think, what we're trying to encourage people to do, is be creative. Question whether or not you've got all the tools and skills that you need, and then find somebody to work with that gets you. So until next time, this is Scott Hall, Taylor Rigg, mixing and mastering at Masterdisk. Make great sounding music.